All right. Welcome in. Looks like we are live and good to go on YouTube, live and good to go on Facebook. My name is Connor Riley here with Dog Nation, previewing figures to be a pretty big week of Georgia football. Obviously, signing day tomorrow. That'll dominate, I'm guessing, a lot of our talk tonight. Latest college football playoff rankings came out. We are still waiting and seeing if Georgia will have a game this weekend, though that is looking less likely by the hour, especially just given the turnaround time. I know Georgia is still trying very hard to get a game in, but if I had to place odds on it, I would not expect that to happen at this point, which really just stinks for your seniors. No bowl game. Not no bowl game, no senior day. You only get 3 home games this year, and only one of those came after November 1st. So really, it was a tough year, but Georgia took care of its end of the business, and you can certainly understand where the disappointment comes from when somebody else doesn't hold up their end of the bargain, which is what has happened at Vanderbilt. I think they fired Derek Mason before the season, clearly to get a jump on hiring Clark Lea, who is going to be the new head coach. But the cost there was that now you had a bunch of opt-outs and guys at Vanderbilt not playing, and I think that really hurt Georgia. So it's sort of a bummer. Allen V. Troll Patrol, which I don't even know why I'm reading this comment. UGA in Iowa doesn't sound like it's going to happen based off some of the comments from Iowa today. Iowa did have their game canceled against Michigan. Some other names out there. BYU has a game against Central Florida on December 22nd, so they're not going to go play Georgia this weekend. Georgia Tech has already said that they're not playing a game this weekend. They're not playing for the rest of the season, rather. It looks like Colorado's not going to happen. Their season is done. So we'll sort of see where it goes from here. But as of right now, as of 7:30 on Tuesday night, it's looking like Georgia is not going to have a game this weekend, which really sucks for a number of different reasons. It stinks for the young guys that didn't get a chance to play. It stinks for the seniors who didn't get a chance to really get honored one last time in Sanford Stadium. So it is what it is, but hopefully we'll go from there. I did see there have been a couple of questions as far as where was the show this morning. Brandon Adams is going to be off both this week and next week. His father unfortunately passed away this past weekend, and so he's going to take some time to be with his family, and we wish him nothing but the best here. The whole Adams family is in our thoughts and our prayers, and it's an irreplaceable loss. I can't imagine what Brandon is going through right now, but I am wishing him the best and hope you all do as well. He is a huge part of our Dog Nation family, as his dad was. His dad was a very vocal supporter of not just Brandon, but all of us, and we wish the entire Adams family nothing but the best here, and hope that they can have the best possible holidays that they can have, because I again can't really fathom what he and his family are going through right now. Clumsily changing gears here. Latest college football playoff rankings came out tonight. Georgia came in at number 8, 1 spot up after the 49-14 win over Missouri. As you can imagine, Florida only drops 1 spot because of their loss to LSU. They sit at number 7 still. And in honor of BA here a little bit, I'm going to go conspiracy corner. I know that some people are maybe a little upset, like how does Florida only drop and they lost as a 3-touchdown favorite? How they still had a Georgia? Reality is Florida and Georgia both still have 2 losses right now. One of those losses for Georgia was a head-to-head loss to Florida. I think that's the biggest reason why the committee right now has them where they are. Now, if Florida loses again this weekend, as we all expect, and quite frankly, as I expect in a greater margin than what Georgia lost to Georgia lost to Alabama to the first time around, then you see Florida drop. And I do think Georgia, even if they did have a game this weekend, I think Georgia would win that game unless it was against Alabama. And I think when the final rankings come out on Sunday, you are going to see Georgia ranked ahead of Florida, which has to really sting if you're a Gators fan this weekend. But again, that loss they had this past Saturday, that's an inexcusable loss to have. You have your entire season in front of you. You have a college football playoff game. You're at home against an LSU team that had only 54 players. It's really inexcusable. So ultimately, they're going to be sweating out. If they lose on Saturday, to Alabama, they might be sweating out whether or not they finish ranked in the top 12. And that LSU. But on the back end, if they lose to Alabama, that might mean they're not in the top 12 unless they're playing in like the Outback Bowl or something, which is a huge disappointment to from where that season was, especially after beating Georgia, to now you're hoping that you play well enough against an Alabama team so that you don't plummet and find yourselves playing in a really inferior bowl game. I've seen some comments about Iowa State. Yes, they do have lost to Louisiana Lafayette, and they do have a loss to Oklahoma State. Both of those teams are ranked right now. I don't think Iowa State's going to get in the playoff. There are 2 losses. Again, one of those was to a Sun Belt team, albeit a very good one. And ultimately, I think Iowa State's going to lose this weekend to Oklahoma anyway, and that's going to clear up a lot of the sort of clarity around there. It's pretty funny. Georgia has a chance to finish like number 5 in the final college football playoff rankings if, say, a Texas A&M or Ohio State or maybe even a Clemson find a way to lose this weekend. So it'd be pretty funny in a year where everything really that could have gone wrong for Georgia did. Defensive injuries before Florida, Jamie Newman opt out before the season. You have a just completely wiped out offseason, no spring practice when you are installing a brand new offense. So to have all that happen to you, have all that go wrong, and you're still a fringe top 5, and maybe by the final rankings come the end of the season after the bowls, a top 5 team, I think that says a lot about what Kirby Smart and Georgia has been built at Georgia. And not just the Georgia player or the coaches, but really the players as well. They deserve a ton of credit. Other than Newman, to our public knowledge, no one has opted out. There has been no sort of, hey, we don't want to play this week. They have made it a point to play, to take COVID seriously, to make sure that these guys are on the field every single week. Again, Georgia has had no COVID issues publicly to our knowledge. And yes, some guys have had it. I know Ladd McConkey was revealed that he had to be out for contact tracing. But it's not like Jamari Sawyer or Ben Cleveland or certain guys missed starts because they had gotten COVID. Quite the opposite. These guys have stuck to it and deserve an immense amount of credit for getting through the season the manner that they did. And again, to sort of touch on what we touched on at the top here, with no bowl game, or excuse me, not no bowl game, no senior day, it's just a real bummer for these guys who've sacrificed a ton and to our knowledge, did everything the right way. So sort of top 2 topics right now. Will Georgia play on this Saturday? I don't think so. College football playoff rankings, again, top 4 is the same. I expect all 4 of those to remain the same, though Clemson and Notre Dame might flip-flop depending on how the results of that game go this weekend. I see Greg Buford asking, is LSU playing this weekend? Yes, they're playing Ole Miss. Texas A&M is playing Tennessee. Because of the fact that those teams have games, it is looking less and less likely that Georgia is going to be able to fill that game on its schedule. So we will sort of see where it goes from there. Brian Finnery asked, Jermaine Johnson in the transfer portal. Yeah, Jermaine Johnson wants to play more, and I thought he had played a fair amount this year, but obviously he wants more snaps. And given he's missed some time due to injuries, and he came in as a JUCO player, it's imperative to him and his family to get more on NFL tape so that he can be a potential draft pick. Quite frank, and again, I'm no draft expert here, but I thought he played sensationally when he was on the field this year. There was a point where he had 4 straight games with sacks. And he was looking like an NFL caliber player, and maybe perhaps other than Azeez Ojulari, I don't know if any Georgia defender, I should say, had a better season than what Jermaine Johnson has had. He's in the transfer portal. From what it means for Georgia, I was expecting him to go to the NFL draft anyway, so it was sort of an expected loss in that aspect. So the initial sort of take is, well, the end of the season, Georgia's going to move forward next year. But if you told me that Jermaine Johnson could have possibly come back and he was a senior, did have that option to do so, I do think that he really helps that Georgia defense, especially if Azeez Ojulari or Adam Anderson decide to go pro, because you look at Georgia's outside linebacker room, which might be a strength, is certainly a strength now. If you lose Ojulari, Johnson, and Anderson, it turns into a little bit of a question mark. Now you do have Nolan Smith and you do have Mikael Sherman there as blue chippers. And Nolan Smith is someone I have zero doubts about. I expect him to step in next year and be every bit as good as Azeez has been this season. And Nolan's not had a bad year by any stretch of the means, but when Azeez is one of the best defenders in the SEC this year, it just makes it a little bit harder to get on the field. So And that's sort of where it is and where we're going from there. I see Scott Green saying Connor thinks everyone is going. There's part of a reason for this. Georgia has almost 20 guys enrolling early this year. They're under a real number crunch. And so if they want to get all these guys in, especially get them in early, some of these guys are certainly going to have to go pro just to make the numbers and the math work out of all of it. So, and the reality is Georgia's had 4 or 5 players go pro every year under Kirby Smart since he really got things up and rolling. So this is sort of a new normal to get adjusted to. Yes, Alabama does bring some guys back every year, but Georgia did that last year as well, and Georgia's going to do that again this year. I think a guy like Jamari Sawyer, some people think he might go pro. I think he's coming back. I think you would include Trey Hill there as well. Maybe a Jordan Davis decides to come back for another year. Georgia's going to have juniors go pro early, and not all of them are going to be first-round picks, but they're going to be guys that go pro because they have solid seasons and they're ready to go make an NFL living. I think you look at a guy like Mecole Hardman, who's having a very good career with the Chiefs right now, had a punt return for a touchdown this past weekend. He went early, was a second-round draft pick, and has played very well for the Chiefs so far. So that's sort of where we are. And, yeah, Greg Buford brings up, as long as JT Daniels comes back, that's the biggest thing. If he comes back, and right now I tend to sort of lean that he will do that, I think that sets Georgia up really, really well for 2021 because you look at all they're expected to bring back on that offensive side of the ball with skill players, the wide receiver, the tight end, even the offensive line position. I think this Georgia offense is going to be legitimately special next year if JT Daniels comes back and is the trigger man there. We've got about 11 minutes here now, which means we've got most of the big team news out of the way, ready to roll. So let's move on to signing day tomorrow. Early signing period starts tomorrow. It is expected that just about every Georgia commitment at this point in time will sign. I am not, as of right now, expecting any flips from this Georgia class. I know there have been some talk of Nugget Warren potentially flipping to Penn State or Jackson State, but it looks like he had reaffirmed his commitment today. So we'll sort of see where things go. I expect it to be from a commitment, decommitment sort of line, a fairly quiet day. Now, Georgia does have some massive targets that are announcing tomorrow. The three big ones to know, Xavier Sori, he is going off at 9 a.m., a 5-star outside linebacker. He is out of Graceville, Florida. He will be announcing from there. Played this last season at IMG Academy. He's a big need for Georgia in this class. They are going against Alabama and Florida to land his recruitment. And he is someone that Georgia absolutely needs, especially given the positional versatility he has to play at either inside linebacker or outside linebacker, depending on what the depth situation is next year for Georgia. So we'll sort of see what position he ultimately plays should he choose Georgia, but that's a big one. That's going off at 9 o'clock in the morning. We're going to have coverage of that for you there. Next big one is Donovan Edwards. He's a 4-star and a high 4-star running back. I believe his number either 38 or 48 overall prospect in the 2020 recruiting class. He has been Georgia's top running back target for quite a while now. They already have Wassier Carroll, a running back out of IMG Academy, committed. If they land him, that's a massive statement. He's a guy that for a long time was thought, Michigan was a can't lose battle with Michigan. Michigan absolutely needs him. And if Georgia's able to go in there and sweep him in, one, I wouldn't be surprised because you just look at how well Del McGee's recruited. Last year, they go to California to get Kendall Milton. They go to Texas to get Zach Evans before backing out of that one. Del McGee, James Cook out of South Florida. Del McGee has shown that he can go all over the country and recruit the best running backs in the country and land them. And if Georgia is able to do that tomorrow, that's a massive statement. And especially because you look at James Cook and Zamir White, both have decisions to make regarding their NFL draft future. If you bring in a guy like Donovan Edwards, in addition to Labassier Carroll, that sets your running back room up very nicely, not just for 2021, obviously, but for the future going forward, because Edwards and Carroll are sort of closer to the James Cook style backs, whereas you look at what Georgia's bringing back next year for sure. Kenny McIntosh, Kendall Milton, and Dejon Edwards, those guys are all sort of the more bruiser roles that you sort of see Zamir White fill. So if Georgia can land Carroll and Edwards, I think that really solidifies what they have at the running back position. And then the third big one, arguably the biggest one of them all, Mason Smith, 5-star defensive tackle out of Louisiana. It's a Georgia-LSU battle, it sounds like. I will say, just doing some research and having written about this a little bit, LSU has not missed on a 5-star in-state prospect since the 2014 class. That was a long time ago. Ed Ogeron has done a great job recruiting that state, keeping guys home. I know Cedric Von Pond-Granger committed to Georgia last year. He was a late riser, and he ultimately wasn't a 5-star. Mason Smith is a guy absolutely LSU wants. He's a guy any team should want, but Georgia has done an exceptional job recruiting him. The fact that they're still in this in the either first or second team, I think shows a lot about what Georgia is building on this defensive line. And if they're able to land him, you look at next year, there's a potential defensive line where you have a Jordan Davis, a Jalen Carter, a Trayvon Walker, Zion Logue, Warren Brinson, Nazir Stackhouse, guys getting better. And then you bring in a guy like Mason Smith in there. That defensive line is going to be every bit as good as it was this year for Georgia. He is going at 4:30. He's sort of the last of the big ones to go off tomorrow, and certainly one worth watching there. I think if they land any combination, any two of those three guys, I think that Georgia is going to lock up at the number 3 class in the country, which will say quite a bit about how they were able to recruit this year, just given Georgia, perhaps more than anyone else, is more reliant on those visits, and especially late in the year visits, because of the way they had recruited nationally in recent years. And the fact is those were almost entirely wiped out this year. So they had to rely a lot more on in-state, and they've cleaned up there. They've landed, I believe, 7 of the top 11 prospects from the state, and it's really 7 of the top 10 prospects from the state of Georgia, because Jake Garcia is technically classified as living in Loganville, Georgia, and playing for Grayson High School, even though if it were not a pandemic, he'd be listed as a California recruit. So Georgia's done a great job recruiting the state of Georgia this year. They have commitments from the top 3 in-state players in Amarius Mims, Brock Vandergriff, who I got to see in person on Friday with Jeff, and he looked spectacular as advertised, and a huge win for that Prince Avenue program. And then Shmuel Munden, they have the top 3 guys there. They have done well recruiting offensive linemen. They have recruited well on the defensive side with a guy like Nyland Green, David Daniel, to sort of help rebuild that secondary, which stands to lose a lot. So I think in-state, they've done every bit as good as they can do. So from an in-state perspective, and then tomorrow we'll find out how they do, if they're able, if the sort of Georgia brand is big enough to resonate with guys like Sori in Graceville, Florida, Donovan Edwards up there in Michigan, and Mason Smith out there in Louisiana. So it'll be a fun, exciting day. We're going to have wall-to-wall coverage of it for you. We'll go off at 9, 10, noon. I believe we'll have a 2 o'clock broadcast, a 5 o'clock broadcast, and then at the end of the day, a big wrap-up with Jeff Sintella before the hedges. I'm not going to tell you right now where Jeff Sintella is. I'm going to keep you guys guessing there a little bit, because I don't want to give away too many of the secrets that we have planned for you guys tomorrow. But it should be a very fun and interesting day for the Georgia program, as it almost always is. Right now, Georgia is the number 3 recruiting class in the country. Ultimately, I think that's where they're going to finish. They're not going to be able to catch Ohio State or Alabama. Those 2 teams are far and away the 1 and 2 recruiting classes in this cycle. But Georgia's going to finish, again, a very solid number 3, a very good number 3, sort of on par with where they have been in recent years. Again, another elite recruiting class for Kirby Smart here. 2 other sort of names to throw out there. Elijah Judy, or 3 names really. Elijah Judy, Jimmy Horn Jr., and Corey Foreman. Judy and Foreman will both sign tomorrow and announce on January 2nd. Right now, I don't expect either of those guys to pick Georgia. I think Foreman might be Clemson bound, and Judy, I think, is going to end up in Texas A&M's class. Jimmy Horn Jr., I believe, is going to sign tomorrow, regarding my latest conversation with Jeff Sintell. Georgia's looking to add more wide receiver. It'll be interesting to see what he does. He's someone who's gotten a couple of late offers here, and he looks like an explosive, dynamic athlete, which is something Georgia just doesn't really have in its wide receiver room right now. So it'll be interesting to see what Horn ends up doing, and really what the spots look like for this Georgia class, because it's going to be tight. Because as mentioned sort of earlier in the show, with the NCAA changing the roster exemptions and whatnot, and frankly, a lot of these guys being done with high school earlier now because of the pandemic, Georgia's got close to, I believe, 20 early enrollees. The previous high watermark for that was 13. So you're going to have to do some roster juggling here a little bit. You've seen, I believe, already 5 guys enter the transfer portal. Dwan Mathis earlier this week was announced that he's going to Temple. So it's an interesting sort of roster judgment of, okay, you have seniors who are leaving, I believe 14 of those. You have a couple guys already hitting the transfer portal, expected that they'll leave. You're going to have some juniors go pro, and you're always going to have that possibility to pay attention to and to know about. So it'll be interesting to see how this all sort of shakes out and what the 85-man scholarship roster ultimately ends up looking like for Georgia when this is all said and done. So gone about 20 minutes here so far. We'll open up these last 10 minutes here for questions, comments, thoughts about Georgia not playing this week. And I know a lot of people are big mad about Vanderbilt. I will say it is a little suspect that Vanderbilt was able to play this weekend, have their senior day against Tennessee, and then very quickly cancel its game against Georgia just 2 days later, and having canceled that game against Georgia the week before. I certainly sense where some of that frustration comes from. So, and unfortunately, again, this Georgia team has been excellent over these past 3 weeks. It would have been excellent again had they played Vanderbilt. And I think the next time you see them in a bowl game, which in all likelihood is going to be the Peach Bowl against either a Cincinnati or a Coastal Carolina, at this point in time, I think you're going to see a very angry Georgia team, and the Georgia team that wants to go out and put a number on whoever they're out there facing. So, questions, comments, fire them away. We'll go about 10 minutes here. G Bama boy, good to see you. Connor, does UGA really replace 3 of the 4 DBs? We can hold on to Campbell because of how many cornerbacks are going in the draft. It's going to be interesting. DJ Daniel, has accepted a Senior Bowl offer, which certainly means that he is gone. So has Mark Webb. So has Richard LeCount. So those guys are all seniors. I all expected them to leave, and they're gone anyway because they've accepted a Senior Bowl invite. So now you're looking at what does Eric Stokes do and what does Tyson Campbell do. Eric Stokes had a phenomenal season. 4 interceptions. I believe he's tied with the SEC lead in that category. So it'll be interesting to see what decision he decides to make because he's had a very, very good season this year. Tyson Campbell is someone who, in the 2 biggest games of the year against Florida and Alabama, he struggled. And those are the types of receivers, Kyle Pitts, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, he's going to see at the next level. Campbell obviously has first-round potential, but he's played quite a bit now. This is his 3rd-ish year as a starting cornerback. He can certainly come back, try and be the number 1 alpha guy next year for Georgia at that cornerback position, get another year of experience at corner because, again, he was someone who did not play this position in high school. So it'll be interesting, I think, to see, personally, I would have JT Daniels as 1A, James Cook and Zamir White as 1B, 1A decisions they have to make. And then shortly after that, Stokes and Campbell, what they decide to do, I think is going to be very interesting. Yeah, G Bama boy, he wants Stokes out of there because Eric Stokes is a very good defender. And I believe Devontae Smith had 1 touchdown on him at the end of the game, but most of that game they were throwing away from Eric Stokes, and I believe for good reason we've seen by that. Let's see. Yeah, unfortunately, the Peach Bowl, again, maybe Georgia can luck its way into an Orange Bowl, maybe a Cotton Bowl. But, I think the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl people, they want Georgia there because of the proximity, because Georgia was supposed to play in a Chick-fil-A Kickoff Classic this year against Virginia. Ultimately, it stinks that their opponent's probably going to be a Group of 5 team, but I think logistically that makes a lot of sense right there. I guess there's an outside chance that maybe Clemson loses to Notre Dame this weekend, falls out of the playoff picture, and maybe potentially you could get an Orange Bowl where it's Georgia-Clemson, which I think just about everyone would sign up for, especially given that game is supposed to open the 2021 season. And I think that'd be a lot of fun. I also think Georgia-North Carolina in the Orange Bowl could be very interesting to watch for as well if you're a Georgia fan, just given that's a very good offense. And Georgia this year struggled against those when they played against Alabama and Florida. So we'll sort of see how that goes. Kevin Maylard asks, how is Florida ahead of us in the CFP polls? Easy, because Florida beat Georgia head-to-head, and this committee has made it pretty clear that matters. And now, should Florida lose this week in Alabama, which I expect them to do, I think Georgia will certainly be ranked ahead of Florida, just given I think the committee is waiting a week to punish Florida for that loss, because if Florida wins this weekend, what do you do with them from a college football playoff perspective? Because they'd easily have the best win in the country. The problem is that loss, I think, is so bad that it's ultimately going to prevent them from getting in. And the reality is Florida's played with its food a lot these last couple of weeks. They haven't looked all that impressive against games like Kentucky and Tennessee, where they messed around a little bit. They didn't cover in either of those 2 previous games, and they go out and they lose to LSU. So I'm expecting Alabama to do what it has done the past several weeks and just go out there, smack Florida around, smack their opponent around, and win convincingly and show that they're the best team in the country, because that's what they've been all season. So let's see. Bruce Bradford asked, will a one-loss Notre Dame go instead of Texas A&M? I do believe that is the case. I think this Notre Dame team has looked really good, whereas this Texas A&M team hasn't really capitalized on the opportunities it's had over the back half of the season. And Notre Dame arguably has 2 wins better than what Texas A&M's Florida win might ultimately look like, because they'll have beaten North Carolina and they'll have a win over Clemson, albeit Clemson didn't have Trevor Lawrence in that first game. Unless Notre Dame just gets absolutely blown out with Lawrence at the sticks, for Clemson, I would expect Notre Dame to be in the playoff, as I expect Alabama to already be in the playoff. What really I think gums things up is that Florida losing last week, I think really hurts. I think Florida losing this week really hurts the potential of an all ACC, SEC college football playoff matchups, because Ohio State, again, they're still number 4 right now, but they're only going to have played 6 games. Whereas it's a Florida team that will have played 11. They'll have a win over Alabama. They'll have a win over a top 10 Georgia team. So that second loss really, I think, kills that dream there. And Ohio State can be very easy this weekend. They're going to go out and beat Northwestern. And do they have a little bit of an advantage going into the college football playoff? I would venture to guess so, just from a health standpoint. But if they play number 4, if they're ranked as the number 4 team, I think Alabama is going to beat them. I think Alabama is going to beat the national champion come the end of this year. So we'll see. Lottie Lauderdale asks, shouldn't JT wait a year to separate from Trevor? There's a lot of quarterback needy teams in the NFL right now. However, I think that there's also quite a bit of quarterback prospects beyond Trevor Lawrence. I think Zach Wilson for BYU is a really hot candidate. Justin Fields, obviously, we know about him. Trey Lance, Mac Jones, Kyle Trask. Those are all guys that figure to be high NFL draft picks, or at least first couple of rounds. And JT Daniels could certainly go out there and be that. If he comes back next year, yes, Keaton Slovis for USC is a know. Jaden Daniels, and Arizona State is a name. Sam Howell, North Carolina. Those are sort of the early names to know there. But if Daniels does what he's done at Georgia over the past 3 games, if he does that over a 12, 13, maybe even 14 or 15 game season, he's going to be the number 1 NFL draft pick next year, just given if he's able to play that way against Alabama's and Florida's of the world. Because he wasn't even all that great on Saturday. It looked like the pressure Missouri was getting to him a little bit at times there, but he still finishes 16-27 for 299 yards and 3 touchdowns. The receivers Georgia's bringing back are play into exactly what Daniels wants to do. With George Pickens, he said it after the game, with George, it's not a 50-50 ball. It's an 80-20 ball. So we'll sort of see what Daniels decides to do, but I absolutely think he's got a chance if there's staff continuity at Georgia and he comes back next year, he absolutely has a chance to work himself into that top quarterback overall consideration. So, but he might decide he wants to be done with college, move on, be a 3rd or a 4th round pick, and sort of start making an NFL living and competing for that. So, let's see. Questions, comments. Yeah, and Chase Barbie brings up Florida losing also hurts Texas A&M, because that was sort of the feather in A&M's cap, and now you don't have that. And really, in the biggest game that A&M played this year, they lost 52-24 by 4 touchdowns to that Alabama team. So we'll sort of see where things go from there. Let's see. Questions, comments. We'll go about 3 or 4 more minutes here. Let's see. Yeah, Chase Barbie, I agree. The defense is going to be more of a question mark next year than the offense, which I think if you're a Georgia fan, you take that any day of the week. You can get it, just given what we've seen Kirby Smart and Dan Lanning are able to do with building defenses. And look, this Georgia defense is still going to have talent. Nakobe Dean will be back. Trayvon Walker, Jalen Carter, those guys will be back. You get to see a healthy Keely Ringo, Jalen Kimber out there, Nolan Smith, as well as guys they're going to bring in this recruiting class. So I expect Georgia to ultimately get it right. Is it the top end, best defense in college football that we were talking about maybe over the last 2 years? Maybe not. But I think you've also seen that defense doesn't win what it used to for you. And so you take having a more sure thing on offense than you defense. Georgia's got the talent to figure these things out. So I think that's a good thing that if Georgia has less question marks on the offensive side of the ball next year, it's a very good thing for the Bulldogs because I do trust that this defense will get things figured out. And if Jordan Davis comes back, statistically, this is still going to be a very, very good defense. Georgia still has the best rush defense in the country, and I had time to look at the numbers between when Davis on the field and off. But the Missouri game this weekend, Larry Roundtree had came in and run for over 300 yards in his previous 2 games combined. He had 22 total rushing yards against Georgia. Davis is just an absolute disruptive defender. He pass rushing in what they ask him to do is why that maybe those stats don't show up. But from an impact standpoint, there might not be a more impactful defender in college football in one certain area than what Jordan Davis does against the run. So, let's see. Jeremy Smith, Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis don't really play the same sort of role. Jalen Carter is sort of more of a 3 technique, one gap guy. You ask him to go make a play. Whereas a Davis, what Davis does so well is he's able to take up multiple blockers and free up other guys to make plays. So, let's see. Let's get one more good question here. Jay Parker, what's the risk that Monken doesn't return next year? I would say pretty low. I know Auburn has sort of jump-started the coaching carousel, and there's been maybe a little bit more coaching turnover than we thought we'd see. But I don't think Monken ultimately showed enough this year to get the head coaching job that I think he wants. So, and again, Southern Miss has hired their head coach in Will Hall, the Tulane offensive coordinator. South Alabama has hired their head coach in Indiana defensive coordinator Cade Womack. So the spots you maybe look for Monken to go this season anyway, based off what happened in Georgia, I don't think we're going to see that. So I would expect Monken to be back another year. And it always sort of struck me as a 2-year proposition for Monken. And if Georgia's offense looking like it has had these past 3 games, Monken's going to be a very, very wanted man next year because this offense against granted South Carolina, Vanderbilt, Missouri, undermanned defenses has just looked fantastic and everything you'd sort of want to from an elite college football team. Chase Barbie, this is our winner of the night. This is, I think, the best question I've seen. If I got to pick who Georgia would play on Saturday, who would it be? I would pick Texas A&M because I think Georgia has a chance to beat Texas A&M. I know the way A&M wants to play right now is sort of similar to what Georgia did in 2019, where they're not a great throwing team. They don't have a whole lot of options out there on the perimeter. They've got a great offensive line. They want to run the football, and defensively, they're going to make you earn it. And I think that'd be a great test. I think it's something Georgia could actually go out and win and make sort of a statement. I don't think it's enough to get them into the college football playoff. It's hard to when you have double-digit losses to Florida and to Alabama. But you win that game, that's a huge statement. That helps your bowl profile, too. That maybe gets you out of the Peach Bowl and, say, into a Cotton Bowl against an Oklahoma, maybe even a Fiesta Bowl against USC. So I certainly think that a game against Texas A&M, if I could wave a magic wand and have Georgia play them, I think that's what I would do, because if Georgia wins that game, it opens a lot of doors for them from the postseason standpoint. And it allows them to sort of make a statement that they are, in fact, still behind Alabama, yes, but also ahead of everyone else, I believe, in the SEC this season. So that's sort of who I would go with there. It's going to do it for us. We're going to have a ton of content for you guys tomorrow with signing day from 5 a.m. till 8 o'clock at night with all the things that are going on. It'll be a great day for the Georgia program. Hopefully, maybe we get a game in this weekend, though I'm not optimistic about it right now. So with that, Jeff Sintel will have multiple shows for you guys tomorrow. We're going to do Cover 4 on Thursday. Friday Night Mike is still going to happen on Friday. Hope everyone has a great week. Stay safe out there. Wear your mask. Practice social distancing. Maybe Georgia gets a game. We'll find out where they're going bowling on Sunday. I think right now it's the Peach Bowl against Cincinnati. But everyone have a great weekend. If I don't see you next week because I'm off, have a Merry Christmas. Have a great year. And go Dogs.